welcome back to FMtrain.tv. This is Nick, who has forgot what we even look like here. We do miss Nick. It's awesome. Nick, now you want to give us are you in jail currently? Are you broadcasting live from prison? Where are you right now?
Not in jail. I'm in my house.
You're in a
in
house.
Greece.
Well, I can't tell.
Yeah.
It's clearly a fake background, right? So
Because I have the wall behind me, so it's better to have this.
it's better to have that than a wall. Well, it's better than the prison bars behind you. I'm just not sure where you're at. So I haven't had lunch or dinner or anything with Nick in so long. I forgot what he looked like. So I know he has curly hair and he makes interesting interfaces, and all of the live stream people love him. So today, before we get to the Nick part of the show, today is FileMaker and financial regulations outside the U.S., Europe, South America, other places like that. Once again, Nick is going to be talking about this. We're going to ask, the goal is not so much for Nick, well, show me a solution that works in northern Patagonia or someplace, right? You know, where they're dragons and wizards, right? So every regulatory area is going to be different. The conversation is going to be general in nature if you have specific questions. But the question came up because someone asked, can FileMaker do this? And of course, the 3-letter answer is yes. But I figured that it would be a good conversation to have Nick talk about it. Tomorrow's themes and styles for beginners, right? Whatever you can't fit, Nick, in 50 minutes is not a beginner topic. So you have 15 minutes to explain for beginners what that's about. Thursday, Monkey Bread 13.4 with Christian Schmitzer. Friday, commonly used get functions. I like that get a life function in that icon there. That's kind of funny. That is the upcoming schedule. As a reminder, this broadcast is brought to you by FMtrain.tv, where it doesn't cost anything to watch the free live streams. But if you want to support the channel, we're trying to put together an emergency fund to collect some pennies and nickels and quarters and things. We're putting them together in a fund to get Nick on an airplane, one-way ticket back home, back to the United States, so he can actually be awake when he talks to us on a live stream, because right now it's like midnight and he's barely awake. And so we really need to get Nick either a soda machine with caffeine. He can sit there and pour drinks for himself while he live streams, or we bring him back to the United States. Either one is okay with me. So purchase one of the training bundles here that helps us support the channel. All he's got is caffeine. Okay, good. All right, cool. Well, so we're talking to Nick today. I'm going to switch to Nick mode. So how do I switch to Nick mode? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to switch to Nick. So you and I have talked about this before, and sometimes I've heard about the way the government works with businesses and invoicing in different jurisdictions. And I remember this one, like in the United States. Let me explain to you how it works in the United States real quick. So you on your honor system, keep track of all the invoices and money that you sell. And at the end of the year, every 12 months, you write that up onto a form or a bunch of forms, and you submit to the government. Okay. And because of the way banks and stuff work, the government will can back check the data you put in there by looking at your bank accounts, things like that. That's why some people will do cash transactions. That's really hard in a consulting business. I only had 1 or 2 customers ever that paid in stacks of cash. And I mean that seriously. I was kind of questioning about what they were doing, but I would get paid like, hey, they always said this is 50 grand right here, but they owed me like $5,000 or $6,000, $8,000. And I would get a stack of cash like this. And I'm like, we got to report that on our taxes, but what are you doing to generate this kind of cash? We never found out. That person disappeared and went away. So the question is, Nick, is if you go to you've been to a lot of countries, you're a world traveler. And I remember in some places you had to have before you did a business invoice or something, you'd have to go to the government and get an ID for that transaction, so it would be tracked with the government, all sorts of stuff. So when people say, can FileMaker be customized to support their local regulations? I mean, the answer is yes, but if people come to you, what are the things that you think about if you're going to do business transactions or invoicing transactions in other countries? Right? We want to just, what do you think, and what are the considerations that go through your head?
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone. So thank you for joining. So the first thing you need to think about is to know the laws of your country about business. Okay. So you need to know about what you need to do in order to be authorized to produce an invoice, because anybody in the US, anybody can do an invoice. But let's take France, for example, which is a really, country with, so you need to be registered, at Chamber of Commerce, and you need to be registered on many organized, offices, agencies that you need to be, registered. So when you get all those numbers, tax numbers, and when you do this, you need to know about the taxes, because this is where they're going to hit you if something goes wrong. Okay, so first you need to get all your things, that, and independent of the FileMaker, this is for all. If you buy an invoice system online, you need to do that. That nothing to do with FileMaker. But it's important to know the tax, because in the US it's pretty easy. Easy, yes and no, because depending is you have the local tax, and you have the tax, and you have the county tax, and the rates is different. But in France is different. Is, for example, some goods have tax. Okay, service is taxed at certain rates. Some goods are different. They have different levels. So you have pretty much two. You have 5.5 in France, for example, and 20.6. So depending what you sell, what you bill, so you need to know that, right? And you need to collect the amount. So when you have the tax, or your invoice need to gather the tax, and you cannot mix both taxes. You have the 5.5 and you have the 20.6 need to be separated. So that the first thing is come to my mind is the tax, because this is where they're going to hit you. Tax, and how your local regulation are forced you to get your bill numbers. Because I know, for example, in France, if you have a gap, between two invoices, they say, hey, what happened here, right? So, and then you get in.
Weren't you explaining to me that before you could do an invoice in some countries, that didn't you have to do an API call or something like that to get a deal number, and then have that the government deal number on your invoice so they could cross-reference everything?
Yes, exactly. So you have country like this. I know in South America you have this. So you need to have for each invoice, you need to have all the numbers. Then the government can track what the government wants to do, track the invoice when you issue the invoice, and track the invoice when the invoice get paid, right? So they want, because they don't want I bill you 10 million and you pay $200. That means it's something like, or I bill you $200 and you pay me 10 million, right? So I mean, there's a fraud here, right? So they do that. So you can have sometime countries that what they do, they give you you use numbering. So they give you a number pattern. So you need to follow this pattern. So you need to follow each bill you invoice, you send, need to use that pattern. That means it's a concatenation of multiple numbers with a counter at the end, right? So this, unfortunately, we cannot talk about all the country of the world, since it's different for all the countries, but pretty much the tax is important, and all the numbering and all the numbers, because, for example, when you print the invoice, for example, you need to show everything in the invoice that are, for example, let's take France again, like an example, not to be United States, but in France. So you need to put all the numbers you have, all your I don't remember the name of this number you need to put there. It's a 3 letters in France. So you need Siret. It's SIRET, right? It's the number.
SIRET, Siret.
Yeah. So Siret. So let me see. I don't even. I didn't do that for 15 years. So Siret, what it is. So you have two. You have Siret and Siren. Okay. So it's the it's a European stuff.
Oh, the
Okay.
EU. That's right. The EU.
Yeah, it's a EU. It's a VAT number. So it's the SIRET is your registration about it's your account number for all about your tax transaction. So your invoice, you need to have one number, and you need to put that number inside the bill. Then the guy, your client is going to pay that bill and report it against your SIREN number, right? SIREN or SIRET, it's there's two numbers. Are I don't know what the difference between it's
Well, that's
so you
fine.
need
I think you have. So let's talk about big picture, not so
yes
much specific to France. So the
yeah
big picture is that you have to identify your business. You have to in the United States, it could be an EIN number, Echo India November number, or it could be a tax ID number, but some sort of ID number that identifies you, RCC, to the government. Then in some government locations, you have to register the deal in advance. So before you actually transact the invoice, you have to go through an API or web page or something and get like a number, and that will be the number that's issued to you that you put on your paperwork. Someone was explaining that. David Angel's talking right here. He's in Panama. David, I forgot you were in Panama, right? So David says the bill goes to the internet direct to the tax office.
Mm.
API server here is the number of the business. Yeah, so it's you can register. Some places you register the deal after you do it. Some places you register the deal before you do it. In the United States, you don't report the individual deals. You summarize all the deals yourself, or your accountant does, and you report a summary report. It's called your 1040 in the United States, a summary report with some associated documentation to the government. If the government wants to audit you or look at you because they think you've cheated, then you're going to have to get into the details of how you created that report. And they're going to come into an office. You might have your attorney there, et cetera, your accountant. And so, the United States, you submit a summary, but the government will back check that, right? For example, if Nick reports that he made $5,000 from RCC, and then we report to the government at the end of the year, because we have to, that we paid Nick 80, 100,000, whatever we paid Nick, and he only reports 5,000, then the government's going to go 5,000, 80,000, something's wrong. We need to investigate, and it sets off a flag. And so it's literally flag underscore investigate on the IRS or the tax people's data system. And if they have a tax person that's available, they will do that, and they'll do it in the United States up to 7 years later. So you got to keep at least 7 years of paperwork in the United States. So yeah, other questions about this stuff? Because Nick is the perfect person to ask. You've done Colombia, Greece. Where else have you been?
I did a lot in Europe. So but now before you had the currency issue, before you have but now it's everything is European. So I did Europe, let's say United States. I did a little bit of South America as well. So I mean, I know about. I didn't build anything for South America, but I lived there, so I know how it works. So yeah. So the thing is, some countries you need to have a authorized software for the. You need to. It's like notarizing, your transaction. I mean, you need to have a software that is going to put kind of numbers, magic number there, and you need to have the software to be to be like I would say authorized by the government or whatever.
Almost like approved
by the government, right? So if you have your own in those countries, if you have your own FileMaker stuff, you can do your FileMaker stuff, but at the end, you need to export in CSV and put everything in one other software to get. I know in Canada, for example, we need to do that for for payroll, for example. You cannot do a payroll software in Canada and just use it. No, you need to be something approved by the government. You can do in FileMaker, you do all your, you can gather the number, bill your number, bill your total, but at the end of the day, everything need to be there with our accounts, with the accounting numbers, for each dedicated section of the payroll. You have So I know that, right? So for the invoice, it's the same. You can do everything with FileMaker, for itemizing your invoice, getting the total, but at the end, you need to send everything to another software, get in, and then it's officialized, approved by the government, right?
Well, QuickBooks is like that in the United States.
Yeah.
QuickBooks is to the point where it's approved by the government in a lot of areas. And if you're doing, like when you prepare your tax in the United States, you notate that whether an accountant's doing it, and the accountant will notate whether QuickBooks is involved and things like that. But the accountants will certify that they have reviewed your, like in the United States, we do the summary. You can do your own taxes, but mine are like literally this fat, which is crazy for those of you who can see what I'm talking about. This like 6-8 inches of paper. And so I don't want to do that myself. And then early on, my accounts would do it, and then they would say they didn't certify it. And now we're to the point now where we've gone through more processes. The accountants say we have audited their bank accounts and things like that and looked at everything because QuickBooks is doing that for them. And they say that they have audited it and it looks legit and it's good, which helps lower your risk of an audit or the government investigating you, right? So the goal is to always not have the government crawl up your ass. I was trying to explain this to some people the other day. They didn't understand why they had to do things a certain way. And I said, well, if you don't do it a certain way, then you're setting off flags. It's caused the government to take interest in you, right? And you'd rather probably not be that person unless you're just a professional tax person, and maybe that's how you make your living. Okay, so Code to Go is a Twitch viewer, Nick, and we're back to your French. Remember that you just looked it up, the two things in France, the CIFRET.
Yes, Siren and Siret.
Okay, Code to Go says is one for sales within France domestically and one for international sales ?
For those two numbers?
Yes.
Okay, so that is to identify. So the Siret with a T at the end, it's to identify the company to the government, and the Siren
probably to identify both parties would be my guess.
It's the same.
One is for the person doing the buying and one is probably for the person doing the selling would be my guess. But if it was international Code to Go, I don't, like when I sell something or buy something in France, I don't do any of that stuff, right?
Yeah, no, you don't,
because we're not within that jurisdiction, right? So
exactly. So that okay. The Siren. It's to me it looks the same thing. Okay, so and they call that Siren/Siret. So it's hard to know what it's your tax number. It's your tax ID, pretty much. It's your tax ID, and then the government track you with this, and then if they come to get you, they know where to go.
Well, so in Colombia, when you do, so let me bring this up as a question. So if you have to declare, let's say that FileMaker, okay, well, back to this issue of authorized software, right? So it says out of the box, you build an application, it's not going to be authorized. But FileMaker can talk to an API to the government and get data. It could you could go through the authorization process, but FileMaker has that ability. Someone was asking if FileMaker can do these things where it talks to the government, etc. As a general rule, FileMaker can do anything like a SQL system can do, right? Any other system can do. You just have to build it and you have to test it. And then if it has to be certified, you have to go through that process, which will take some. So on screen, I've got the Discord popped up over here at the Nick, if you see Discord at the same time. Stu says, have you had instances where the location of the server made a difference to the customer? Yeah, and that's GDPR, right? That's a big one, right?
So the location of the server. So you have countries where you cannot host your data outside the country. It's illegal. So you need to have. You can still use Amazon, but need to be in the country, right? You cannot send things outside because that will be considered like a tax evasion or something weird, and you cannot do that, right? Especially if you are involved especially when you have government help support like subsidies and stuff like that. When you have this involved and you have your data outside the country.
GDPR was about privacy concerns, right? And so that was one of the things that if the data was stored if like you're in the EU, GDPR is kind of a European Union thing. And if you stored the database in an Amazon data center in the United States, for example, then you couldn't guarantee that the data was protected per GDPR. So that caused a lot of problems. So one of the things that's come up with Claris is people are asking, well, Claris Connect and Claris Studio, can they be hosted in European data centers so we can use them? So that way we regulatorily are in compliance with the confidentiality of the customer information. And Claris was initially, and this is more of a Jacob Taylor conversation, but Claris initially did some work with Amazon, and a lot of their data center stuff was with Amazon in terms of the Claris cloud, their hosting as a server, where they do software and hardware as a service, SaaS, right? That was originally Amazon, and then I don't know how much of their new stuff, the Claris Connect and Claris Studio, were on Google. And then somewhere along the line, about a year ago, they realized that or 6 months ago, whatever it was, they realized they couldn't get there from here. It's like when you build on a technology stack and it can't get there. And so they went through this big song and dance where they said, well, we're not going to be shipping Claris Studio and Connect improvements for like X number of months, because we're converting everything to work from Google to Amazon. So they moved all their stuff out of Google to Amazon. I'm not a giant Google fan because Google, I've caught them reading my mail and trying to sell me white powdered donuts. I love white powdered donuts. I hate that. I love it. Well, I love them, but I hate it when you read my mail. Amazon, to my knowledge, has never read my mail and tried to sell me Dolly Madison white powdered donuts. I trust them more than I trust Google, right? Microsoft, I trust as much as I trust Google. It's like, no, right? And then Apple, I don't know if I trust them. But Apple gets so much of my money that I don't think they bother trying to get more out of me. I mean, who do you trust or where do you want the data at? So the running theory is that if you have a data center in your local jurisdiction, like if an Amazon data center in Europe, and Claris puts their servers there, then you could use that service and then somehow it would be protected. I don't know how protected that would be, but it makes everyone feel better. So
if you have sensitive data, like a client of mine, a new client that I have, or it has very sensitive data, right? And he wants his own server. He has his own in-premises server. He doesn't trust the cloud. Then you have other people that I used to work with. They work with the governments. So the government says, no way you're going to put the data of the citizen of the country to an Amazon server or Google server somewhere in the world, right? No.
Yeah, to that effect, Amazon actually has data centers in the United States they only service the U.S. government on sensitive material. So there's whole buildings that are just for that, right? So, but yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, if your data is very sensitive, which I understand, sometimes you have sensitive data, you don't want to be hacked or stuff like that. Even though FileMaker is kind of hard to hack, I mean, it's not as easy as another. Knowing that in terms of security, because at one point I was very, very versed in this, and I'm back on the security for that guy that I'm working for. And
that one. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's very interested in security.
Yeah. So 90% of the hacking happened with somebody with a USB key and going to the server, dragging the file, the USB key.
Yep.
So 90% of the hacking happened like this. So having your server in premises, you need to have the room locked.
Right. Well, the room is locked, and then you need the transport over the wire. So I will simply relay a short story that will put this. Go back to this movie. It was called The Way of the Gun. It doesn't really matter, but the point is that it was a mafia boss talking about $15 million. And the one guy goes, well, I'll just take the cash and do the trade-off or pay off this to get the kidnapped person back. And the mafia boss grabs this guy and says, $15 million is not cash. Cash is what you go to the grocery store with. $15 million is motivation with a universal adapter. To that point, about 15 years ago, Boeing and Airbus were locked. Well, they're always locked in battles trying to sell airliners. We're talking billions and billions of dollars here. And the CIA or the NSA or whoever it was decided that they were going to help Boeing out, right? Because it was a United States company and we're a United States agency. So they were reading the internet traffic email of Airbus executives, knowing what they were going to put in the bid for the quote. And they reported that to Boeing so Boeing could come in right underneath it. The system was at the time called Carnivore. The whole idea was that it was an internet tap where CIA and NSA, et cetera, were reading it was eating like a meat carnivore, right? Like Nick at a burger place, he eats all the meat, right? Nick, we love meat. They eat it eats all the data, and then they would parse it apart and read it. And after that, that was such an eye-opening thing. A, I can't believe the government would do that. And B, I would tell it simply, and I would respond to that saying, it's fit, that kind of money. We're not talking 15 million, 15 billion with a B is motivation with a universal adapter. Anyone will do anything for $15 million. You just have to figure out what it would be. Well, at the end of the day, so you need to encrypt your FileMaker data across the wire, right, Nick? And then to what Nick was just saying, encrypt it where it's parked on the server, which is encryption at rest. We talked about that a couple days ago, last week. And so those are essential things that you do. Now, if you're Airbus and you're putting a bid out for data, you might not even want to transact those conversations across the internet. You might have the servers in your office and that data doesn't go out beyond the office because the CIA and other agencies would love to read that. Even if it's encrypted, they would set up supercomputers to try to break your encryption, right?
Yeah. So I remember 20 years ago now. Okay. 20 years ago, I was working for a big oil from the Church of Scientology. So that was it was like everything he wanted to do had to be encrypted and the encryption encrypted. He was paranoid with this, and I understand why, especially in that time. So, for example, just to let you know, the worst messaging system you have in the world is email. Email is the worst. It's like it's like talking in the middle of everybody. It's the same because you dropped. So if you have sensitive data, you don't use emails. Or chatting, chat, the thing you have the most secure today is Telegram using the private chats, because the message will never be stored in any computer. It will be from your phone to another phone or your computer to another computer. But it will never, it's a peer-to-peer. It's not from the server. That's the only one that do that. That's the only one. Telegram or the private chat. Other than that, you have no security on the net. Pretty much, I consider you have no security on the internet. You have no security because you can be hacked, and the United States gets all the tubes, and they get all their servers, and they hold so the DNS is owned by the United States, and so Amazon, Google, all those companies are so there's no security there, so knowing that, not being paranoid, but if you have sensitive data, you need to know that, and if you have sensitive data, forget about the cloud. You need to go in premises. And if you are in premises, you need to lock your room. Like when I was at FileMaker, it was like that. All the servers were on a dedicated room, and you need to get a pass to go in, and to tell why you want to go there. And then this is because it's easy to go with a key, USB key. You drag the file, and boom, and you go away.
Yeah.
So be careful on this. So we have a big history, in 2016 in the United States with an infamous server of an infamous lady that was infamously reckless. So that's how it happened, right? So you need to know about that. But to come back to the invoice,
Yeah, we're off in the weeds, but it's a good question. So
yeah, it's a good question. But to go back to the invoice, what you need to do, my experience on the invoice, I built 2 billion invoicing system to invoice anything, people, to invoice many people, many things. You need to be simple, and to avoid the thing where you can get screwed easily, especially when you have to get, you need to get an history of everything, right? So for example, on the invoice, what you need to take care of is when you are billing items, and you have an item, like you have a material list, and you are billing an item. So you need to be careful that if, for example, you change the price of an item that you billed last year and the same item changed the price now, you don't want to change the past, right? So, what I mean? That needs to be frozen. When invoice is billed, first you need to have a paper track. You need to have a paper. You need to have it on paper, or you cannot just rely on computer. You need a paper track in case of your computer is burned, and in case you have no backup, in case you need a printout always. And that saved the butt of many of my customers. That advice. Also, your system, your invoice system, when your invoice is paid, right? You need to get track of the payments. So you need the invoice number must match the track, must match the payments you get. Okay, so that's important. Then easily you can do the accounting behind this. Of course, when the invoice is paid, it need to be locked or also in your computer. That means you must make a system in FileMaker that this invoice, you can see it on your screen, but you cannot modify it, even accidentally, because that could be an accident. You drop your phone on your keyboard, boom, you modify something, right? So, I mean,
how would you do that, Nick? I could think of it, and here's a challenge for you. Can you build it for me in 5 minutes?
I can build it in 20.
A simple lock
A
on an
simple lock.
invoice.
99.99% of the time, the invoice item is a portal. So I have two portals overlapping. One you can edit, the other one you cannot.
Oh, okay.
You
So
show
you're
hide.
using it with a hidden object. Okay, I was
Yeah.
thinking about using the security management to set a record to viewing, not editing. Right, if that makes sense.
I hate this because you can still copy paste. I mean, you can still, okay, you change, and then he said
Then
you
you
have
change it.
no
There's
right
read
to
only.
do.
Yeah.
You have your portal, you duplicate the portal, you have two versions of the portals overlapping, and one is, you hide and show the one based on the tag, like paid, not paid, 0, 1, and it's instant. You can see it. The downside is this: when you modify one portal, you need to modify the other one. But if you have a big modification, you delete the portal or the lock portal. You delete it. You duplicate the new one, and you make it a new lock. And you select all the field, and you said not editable. That's it. And the button add. If you have a button that says add item, delete, okay, you hide them. Are based on that tag paid.
Okay, so David Angel has a question here. I'm going to take a swing at it. Then we're going to let Nick tell me I'm an abomination. So here we go. So David Angel says, now Nick, just bite your tongue. I'm just repeating this. Yeah, there we go. Zip that lip. Should I, to do the Nick technique, could I place the portal in the slide control? So the two, okay, this could be interpreted two ways. You could have two slide controls. That's where you encompass everything in the slide control with one hidden object. That is a performance boost. You'd have two separate slide control objects entirely. That might be okay if you had one one slide control with two panels in it, I would be worried about someone finding a way of flipping between the panels and you not controlling that. And now I'll hand it to Nick.
It's a nightmare when you go from one record to another. Okay, so I mean, you need to go to layout, you need to go to object on every time you.
Well, you're talking about if you have one slide control and two panels, right? One's an edit panel, one's a read-only panel, right?
Yeah.
With the
So
different
you
portals in them.
you need to go to whatever panel you need to go. But if you say next record, each record you need to go,
Yeah.
So you don't see, but you have a go-to object. I noticed that this is you have a depending on the complexity of your table. I mean, if you have the FMSP with we have what description, quantity, or amount. Okay, if you have something like that, but I have a invoicing and estimates, for example, because that's the same. I have invoices estimate where I have a huge complexity there. With objects per item in the row, I have things showing up, not showing up. I have a conditional formatting. I have so when you have something complex, you don't want that to happen. And at that point, I have a customer who I was working with like 10 minutes before the show, before the webinar. I have two layouts.
Right? Oh,
yeah, but I cannot go next. I mean, if you have a complex system, you have an invoice, because I have it was an estimates system, but let's say it's the same for invoice. I have a versioning. You have multiple versions of the same estimate. So you have an estimate table where I'm showing you all the versions. And when you want to, and I'm showing you the total, I'm showing you a summary of the invoice / estimate, whatever. So you have this table where you can say next, but you see only the summary of an invoice. You don't see the detail. You don't see that. You just see the total, or whatever number you want, the margin you made or whatever, So you see this, and if you want to see the detail, you need to click and open the detail. When you have this type of design, then you can make two layouts, because when you click on one that is locked, you go to a lock layout, and then you have a back button. And if it's not locked, you go to the unlock layout, and then you do you know what I mean? So it is all of this. You need to find a way to accommodate what you want to do, but you cannot. The slide won't work well, and it depends. It depends if it's complex or not complex. If it's not complex, you can do that. It's not. But I noticed that it was pain. I got out of this. Maybe because I'm doing only complex things. I have to admit, nothing in my life is easy. And I said that to my customer.
Not even Richard Carlton in the TV show is easy.
Not even Richard Carlton. It's not easy at all. But no, it's true. If you have complex things, you need to use technique that will reduce the complexity, not adding complexity. So two layouts is better for me because it's separated. You don't have overlapping things, and I'm not playing with the object tree, showing all the time, grouping. You have two layout. If it's complex, two layout will reduce the complexity. Now, if it's not complex, the overlapping portal is the simplest, because you hide and show, you hide and show the portal with the object tree. That easy, because it's one object, right? But you can do your technique of the slide. But the slide, you can have an accident. Okay, here the slide accident you can have. I tell you by experience. Let's say you go layout mode. You go layout mode from the, you go layout mode a slide. So the layout mode will land you in the slide you were. When you go back to browse mode, it lands you to the first slide. So if your slide was the second one, when you go to layout mode, you are in the second one. When you go back to browse mode, boom, you're back on the first. And then let's say you forget about this. You go back another time in layout mode and you modify the wrong slide because you didn't, you know. So I invent a system to correct that problem, that when I go back to mode change, when you exit mode, I go back to the slide I was in to prevent that problem to happen, because it happened to me many times.
On screen real quick here, this is a little sample database that we built. So what we've got right here is, as I flip through records, the kind of records, so there's 4 different layouts here. So it's on record load. It determines by a status here, and it could work the same way where you have 2 identical layouts. One you can edit, one's read only. In this case, if I jump ahead here, and I end up flipping through here, if I get to a gas, and I don't do RC anymore like I used to, but you get to a gas-powered airplane or a helicopter or something like that, and you're going to flip layouts, and you won't even know you flipped the layout, right? So that's what ends up happening here, and you don't even notice it happening.
But so far you didn't flip. You didn't.
It should. It's almost identical. Hang on one second here.
No, I see the name on the layout is the same.
Yeah, hang on. We're getting there. Somewhere in there's a helicopter. Trust me on this. It happens so fast that you don't even know. I'm looking for. There we go. So there's one that jumped. That should have jumped there.
No.
Did it jump? Nope.
No.
That one didn't jump. We'll keep going. Hang on here. Hang on. Trust me on this. This actually worked out pretty fast on the record load. It's so fast, but I forget. Okay, that was a gas airplane there. So this is, it's still on. All right, let me just change this one here real quick. So this is a fixed wing fuel aircraft. So you see there was a minor pixel shift there, right?
Yeah. So and that means imagine, okay, what you need to do, you go back to the L2. Yeah. When you change the type of aircraft, you have a trigger that changed the layout. Go to the type of aircraft, go back to the way it was. Mm-hmm. You have a trigger, boom, you change the layout. So you need to take care of this.
It's in there. Yeah, it's actually in there. It's probably a trigger on that, and it's also on the record load. So you do it 2 different triggers. Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, and the only reason you could tell is there's a little bit of a shift there because I suck. But some of the fields changed because that was the whole point. I was having a hard time trying to explain specifics because the fields would be different. In our case, we're talking about here are the fields that would be locked versus unlocked. So it shouldn't be too much pixel. There's one right here. Here's the helicopter, right? So here's another.
But why you build that way is because at the time you build this, the prehistoric time of FileMaker, you didn't have the hidden state. Maybe now you will have done differently because you have the hidden state.
Yeah. So we did. Yeah, this is before hidden. This is before the Harry Potter invisibility cloak.
Yeah. So we have, so we now I will have built that differently because the change is so slight, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's about 4 or 5 different fields here.
Yeah,
the rest of it's the same. Yeah. If I was doing a whole invoice with a portal, I might do it as a duplicate second layout, one that's read only and one that's full editing. I don't know. I would have to play with that because what Nick was trying to say, it's all about performance. Right? If you do it one way and it's okay, then you're fine. But if you do it and the performance sucks, then you might want to rethink what you're doing.
Yeah, and after that, you have to analyze the situation, because now we have the master detail. You know what I mean? So the master detail, when you change from one layout to another, so you need to have everything that is exactly pixel by pixel, otherwise it do like this, so it's not easy to maintain sometimes. If you do a change in one layout because you have two fields different and you have an entire another layout, and you do a modification in one, at the end of the day, you will end up having 2 different layouts with 2 different things because you're lazy or because you forgot to apply the change on all the layouts, right? So that's why it's a trade-off. Everything is a trade-off.
Because if you put a bunch of that was the whole idea. If you put a bunch of hidden functions on there, that's a lot more processing right? If you're doing a bunch of hidden functions as opposed to flipping the layout once and not having any more.
It depends. I tell you what. When I do and that part of we have a hidden webinar coming next week. I don't remember when, and I will explain how to work with this and to avoid those things and to make it fast. The goal is to, if you I can talk about a little bit about this. The goal is to prevent what we call live calculation. So that means all those conditional hidden state, you don't want to be on live calculation. So what is live calculation? What is hot calculation? Is like each time you go and each time something happened to hide and show something, you don't want to evaluate the calculation. You want the evaluation to have happened. For example, let's say the invoice is paid. The invoice is paid when the total is not empty. For example, let's say, okay, instead of having a conditional or a hidden state that says, if is empty, hide is empty the total, that's a hot calc. You have a Boolean tag that says 0 and 1. When you pay it put 1 in one field, and that field that 1 forever. And then the calculation say, oh, if this is 1 or 0, and then you don't have a calc. So here the performance is 0. And so I'm going to explain that. And by the way, I can take this example of the multiple layout as well, to show how to how to avoid that and how to make the thing less complicated. But sometimes sometimes the David Angel technique of the slide can be good. That can be good in some things, right? Or the hidden state can be good. You can hide and show me. And now we can avoid hiding and showing things thanks to the new layout calculation. For example, before, when the name was empty, no first name, no last name, in the master detail, instead of showing blank, I was showing unnamed, untitled, unnamed, no name, or new contact. Before, the technique we had, we would say, okay, let's take the first name, and if it's empty, we put new contact in the first name. Then it shows, okay, that was dirty. Or we can hide and show in the list of the master detail the name field. Hide. We hide it when it's empty, and we hide we have a new contact, that a piece of text that show up, that hide if the name is not empty. So we have an object hiding. But now with the layout object calculation, we can make this with one object, avoiding the hiding. So sometimes you can do that as well. You can use sometimes, with the new calculation, what I'm doing, I'm using, sometimes you have 2 or 3 fields different, 3 fields, but I'm using the same field, but just the label change. Because let's say you have 3 different fields, but you show always only one of those 3. Right? So you can use one field and you change the label. The label change, so just with the layout calculation, and that avoid many of the problems, right? Sometimes you can also use multi-value fields that to reduce the number of fields. I'm doing that also. Sometimes, when I collect data, I'm collecting information. Let's say I have a dialogue, right? And I'm collecting information. You say, okay, I want this, and then, okay, at the end. All those, I don't have let's say 15 globals to collect the information and to gather this in the script and then do something. No, I have one multi-value global fields. And I said, this is the first, second value, third value, fourth value, fifth value, sixth value. And then I collect this, and then I'm sending to the first. So I have one field, understand? So you have a lot of ways to reduce this, right?
Okay.
Do we have any other question about the invoicing and
Yeah, we're way off in the weeds again, but these are good questions, and I'm glad. And so, so Nick is still live, and we are looking forward to him being back. So tomorrow, what are we doing tomorrow? What's the topic? Some other Nick thing.
No?
Themes and styles.
Yeah, good luck on that, Nick. We're going to be taking bets whether you can keep it down to 1 hour or less. Themes and styles for beginners.
Beginners, yeah. I'm going to have maybe Marge. Do you have this Discord theme that I made one day?
I can go look in our
I built a
storage for it. I recall you doing this. Yes, I don't know if it's stored in marketing advertising, but I can go look.
So I built a FileMaker file with a theme, right? I recommend you do this. Theme is, you can ignore it completely if you're very simple, but it saves time if you know how to use it. And you can screw up your file big league if you don't know how to use it. Maybe I'm going to show you that tomorrow, how to avoid screwing up because you can screw up your file really, really bad. No,
which is not good. So
no, which is not good at all. That's a way you can update current theme you have. So I'm going to prepare that tomorrow. That means you have a file where you build your theme, and then you keep updating that file, and then you import it, the new version inside the file.
All right, cool. I have people calling me, and I'm doing the CEO thing. So, all right, I'm going to let everyone go. Appreciate it. Catch you tomorrow with Nick and beginners and themes and styles.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!